What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so Max Kellerman is back in the news and pretty much back in the industry. I mean, he's not really left, but he hadn't been on any prominent shows really since he departed First Take some 4 years ago. But now he'll be doing a new podcast with Rich Paul. And I guess in promotion of that and other things, recently he was on Bill Simmons' podcast. But it was during that appearance that he made some remarks in regards to Stephen A. Smith. Now, of course, he used to co-host First Take, the debate show with Stephen A. Smith from 2016 to 2021. Max Kellerman was essentially Skip Bayless's replacement. And it was during the appearance with Bill Simmons that he talked a little trash. He said that from his perspective, the main reason why Stephen A. Smith maneuvered to have Max removed from the show is because Stephen A. Smith just wasn't on his level debating wise. He said, and the way I took it intellectually, he said, if you're Stephen A. Smith, do you really want to debate, quote, Muhammad Kellerman? And then he also compared himself to Clarence Bud Crawford, saying, look, if you could do a show where you're sparring against Clarence Bud Crawford for 15 rounds for the whole world to see, eventually you're going to tire of that idea. Essentially said that you're going to be getting embarrassed and you're going to tire of getting embarrassed. So you're going to maneuver to have that ended, right? So he's saying, look, man, Stephen A's just not on my level. That's pretty much what he's saying. So Stephen Smith was going to respond to this eventually. And he did. He just responded to it on his YouTube channel. And this is basically what Stephen A. Smith said, right? He said, first he had to have his researchers check to make sure that video wasn't AI, because he said he just couldn't believe that Max Kellerman called himself Muhammad Kellerman. Like he just didn't think that was real. After he found out it was real, he said afterwards that Bill Simmons should know better than to bring up a question about his work ethic, talking about Stephen A. Smith, right? Because we know Stephen A. Smith real sensitive about criticism. He didn't like the question of his work ethic. Then he went back to Max Kellerman calling himself Muhammad Kellerman, saying that on the very first show that they did, he made a take in regards to Tom Brady eventually, or very soon falling off a cliff. He thought that Tom Brady would be falling off. That didn't happen, obviously. And the very next show, Max Kellerman apologized. He said there have been other instances during the show when they were hosting the show together, when they were debating, where Max Kellerman made ridiculous, proclamations only to have to go back and retract some of the things that he said, right? So I guess he's trying to say like all this Muhammad Kellerman stuff is a whole bunch of malarkey, right? But then he also focused a lot of his attention, from Stephen A. Smith, on Marcellus Wiley. Now, Marcellus Wiley and Max Kellerman are good friends, and Marcellus Wiley pretty much co-signed what Max Kellerman said, and he, pretty much talked about how smart Max is, calling him, almost essentially a genius. He said that also he didn't like how Stephen A. Smith handled the post-Max era. He didn't like how Stephen A. Smith handled when Max Kellerman was knocked off the show. And pretty much Stephen A. Smith went around trying to explain what happened. And he said, this is around the time Stephen A. Smith was, wearing cross colors or dressing like Tupac or whatever. And, to me, right, I always thought Stephen A. Smith started doing that because what Terrell Owens said got in his head. Because, look, Stephen Smith can give all these excuses about, oh, it's a debate show, we agree too much, it's not making for good theater, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? He can say all of that. And maybe to a certain extent, there's truth behind that. Maybe it is truth behind it because they did tend to agree a lot, right? And, Max Kellerman wasn't Skip Bayless, who just has all of these ridiculous, against the grain opinions that work perfectly to play off a guy like Stephen A. Smith, right? But we really didn't start seeing, all of us that watched the show, I didn't really start seeing Stephen A. Smith souring on Max Kellerman. You could see it in his eyes. It was after Terrell Owens questioned Max being blacker than Stephen A. Smith. That's when I really saw it. Because why all of a sudden do you start, like they say, you start wearing, dressed like Nino Brown, dressed like Tupac, wearing cross colors on TV, you know what I'm saying? Because it was getting to you. It was getting to you how when it came to black issues, that's what I really think it was about. Max was the liberal, classic Democratic liberal, right? And at the end of the day, you didn't like the fact that Max could articulate himself on many issues, not just sports related, but politics. And not that y'all talk politics a lot, but when y'all did talk politics, Max seemed more informed about certain things, and Max was more in tune with the black community. You were not. You call yourself an independent, but yet a lot of times you echo, or at least you tend to take positions that are opposite of what most of the black community feel. And that got under your skin. That's what it really was about. I don't care what anybody said. You can sit there and talk about, it's a debate show and, it's just not working with me and Max. At the end of the day, I don't remember the ratings dropping precipitously. So that can't really be it. It's still number one show. That's bullshit. And you talking about how Max Kellerman's a good guy and all that. Well, okay, well then why is it that Max feels like you guys never were close? So there's something about Max you didn't like. There's something about Max Kellerman you didn't like. And I think I know what it is. You don't like people, or you have it against you, in your psyche. You don't like people who make you feel insecure about your intellect or insecure about your skills. So like how you didn't like Kyrie Irving for a long time. You didn't like how when Kyrie Irving would talk to you, apparently, he talked down to you. You didn't like that. Remember how you said, oh, Kyrie thinks he's way up here and everybody else is down. You don't like that. You don't like the intellectuals. You don't like it. It reminds you of when you were in school, when you had learning difficulties. Now, I'm not saying that Stephen A. Smith was a stupid person. He's not. But I think that there's something in Stephen A. still at this age, at age 57 or 58, however old he is now. There's something still inside of him that gets peeved when he comes across people who are considered intellects or people who are, he can tell, he can sense that this person's smarter than me. And I'm Stephen A. Smith and I want to shine brighter. I'm the biggest star out here and blah, blah, blah. That's kind of like what he feels, you know what I'm saying? At least that's how I look at it. And to top it all off, Max Kellerman not only is smarter than you, beats you in a debate most of the times, probably handles you with kid gloves for the most part. But then the black community is more in tune with him than me. You're questioning my blackness? Oh, I'm going to make up a reason to get rid of this motherfucker. Then he talked about the other people that have come along since then. You know, he talked about the people who he debates on a regular basis: Michael Irvin, Shannon Sharp, who's on the program, obviously Cam Newton, Marcus Spears, Mina Kimes, Ryan Clark, Dan Orlovsky. You know, he talked about these people and, you know, some others, Jay Williams and Monica McNutt and Kendrick Perkins and all that, right? Um, all those people that you're talking about, they're really good. They're good. Um, but I get a feeling like a lot of those people feel like they're beholden to you for their position. And I don't know the entire backstory with Max Kellerman, but I kind of get the impression that Max Kellerman may not have been handpicked by you, especially going back to 2015-16, because, I mean, you were a rising star at that point in time, but the perception I would have at that time was that Skip was still the senior partner there. Now, here we are 19 years later, and Stephen A. Smith is the unquestioned top guy at ESPN, but I don't get maybe I'm wrong, but I get the impression that Max Kellerman was not handpicked by Stephen A. Smith. He acquiesced to it, but he wasn't handpicked. Everybody else that you pretty much named, either you handpicked or you feel like that they're kind of beholden to you. But that's just my take on this, man. You know, I don't have an issue with Max Kellerman. You know what I'm saying? Stephen A. Smith, I do have issues with. And, you know, I kind of side with Max more on this situation. I watched those shows, and were they the most exciting? No, because Max. See, this is another thing too. Stephen A. Smith wants somebody to go out there and yell and scream and holler and jump around and swing from vines. And Max is an intellectual. He doesn't feel like he has to do that. And you want theatrics and all that, and that is not what you know what I'm saying? That's not what you think makes good television. Even when you talk about Mad Dog yells and rants, and I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I am a person that likes substance. Some people like the theatrics. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it. What you guys think?